President Barack Obama outlines his plan to ease the burden of student loans.
About 1.6 million Americans could see their payments go down by hundreds of dollars a month.
Local college students weigh in about the weight they're under. Plus, Shakespeare and Company's Tina Packer takes on the Women of Will. And Our Body, Ourselves turns 40, now on Greater Boston. Good evening, I'm Jared Bowen in for Emily Rooney. Cash-strapped college graduates might soon have some extra money in the bank, thanks to an announcement made by President Barack Obama today. Greater Boston's Jaclyn Cashman breaks down the president's latest plan to jumpstart the economy.
President Obama held a student loan relief event in Colorado this afternoon, highlighting two measures to help college graduates manage student loan debt.
And when a big chunk of every paycheck goes towards student loans instead of being spent on other things, that's not just tough for middle-class families, it's painful for the economy, and it's harmful to our recovery.
For starters, the president will accelerate a plan to cap student loan payments at 10% of their income, starting it next year, 2 years ahead of schedule.
We're going to put them into effect not 3 years from now, not 2 years from now. We're going to put them into effect next year because our economy needs it right now.
The second initiative is designed to encourage graduates with two or more kinds of federal loans to consolidate them.
We're going to make it easier for you to have one payment a month at a better interest rate.
American Student Assistance is a nonprofit organization that guides students through the murky waters of college debt. Mike Ryan of ASA says this is not an overhaul of student loans, but a tweak to the system.
It's a modification as opposed to a brand new program. The great thing from our perspective is that it's an opportunity to raise the visibility of this option. You know, one of the unfortunate things is that option has been available for quite some time. Many borrowers are simply not aware of that.
This program could benefit some 1.6 million borrowers and decrease their monthly payments by a couple $100s. Area college students burdened by debt say this is music to their ears.
I will have money in my pocket. I could always, find an apartment, make life after, my undergraduate experience a little easier for me.
But other college students prefer to focus on the course load and not what the postgraduate balance sheet will look like.
I'm sure I'll be worried about it, but I'm not dying of fright about it.
Student loan debt has been a major protest platform in the Occupy Wall Street movement. However, most of the college graduates demonstrating won't benefit from Obama's plan because it only helps borrowers taking out loans next year.
And here to talk about the high cost of higher ed, our recent college graduate, Charlie Mars-Malau, current college student Terrell Walker, and Lynn Myers, Director of Financial Aid at Holy Cross, who also has two children in college herself. Welcome to all of you. Charlie, coming out of school, the average college debt right now, student loan debt, is about $24,000 for a public institution. It's around $28,000, I think, for private. But you have a $70,000 debt at this point, and you're unable to find a job. You're an English major. You were an English major. So how are you going to manage this debt load going forward?
Well, I have $70,000 and $50,000 of that is in private loans, but at a good interest rate. $20,000 is in federal loans, which is helpful. But, I'm hoping that I'm an intern currently with a local radio station. I'm hopeful that things will come, from that experience.
So how do you manage it? Do you have to start paying it right away? And is this something that you think about constantly, that no matter what you do, you have this $70,000 bear just staring you in the face?
There's a 6-month deferment period, but yes, you have to find creative ways to manage both what you're pursuing and the debt itself.
Terrell, you're about to graduate. I understand you've just got a couple courses left to finish. How are you contemplating this? And I understand your debt load is around $20,000 when you graduate. How concerned are you? Are you afraid about graduating in this job market?
Yeah, possibly, because I have a side job, like a job on the side that I get money from, but I don't know about a job in the future. But I hope so because I have the skills, to be able to do this. But the thing is, just the job market is crazy right now, and right now all I have is to depend on my job, my part-time job, which is that's 20 hours a week, which is a load, but it's not nearly as much, or I won't be making as much to be able to pay that off, you know.
So yeah, what choices do you think that you'll have to make as soon as you graduate, and after the 6-month deferment period, you have to start paying these bills?
Probably better budgeting, and also be looking for like a job on the side and things like that, because right now I've been looking for another part-time job in inclusion to this one I have now, because I at least want to get some money, some extra cash flow coming in so that I have money saved up ready so that I can be able to spend wisely, because I will have also bills outside of my school loans that I got to pay as well.
Lynn, you've been working in financial aid for 27 years. Have you ever seen another time like this where the costs, well, obviously you've not seen a time where the costs are so high because they've never been this high before, but how do you assess this with other periods over your career?
Well, financial aid's funny because we have the ebb and flow of the economy, of course, and it impacts the student's family's ability to help the student take off some of that burden while they're going through school. So, we've gone through many times in the economy when money was tight, unemployment high, and it all seems to work out. This is what we tend, higher education is an investment in the student's future, and the degree that the student has to borrow to make that investment is really where the conversation should be. There are a lot of safeguards in the programs, particularly the federal programs. I think Charlie mentions the private debt of the $50,000. That's where we like to caution the student and not go into that arena. Or if you're in that arena, be cautious about how much you can assume. But if you're borrowing under the federal loan programs, usually to the tune in the low $20,000, typically it makes sense, and the repayment options give you the flexibility to fit that in.
But given the debt load at this point, and given how high the jobless rate is, which is also the highest that it's been since these sorts of records were kept, are you really still fundamentally optimistic for your students, for your own kids?
Yes, I am. I am very much. There's a lot of options in repayment with the loan. The best thing you can do for yourselves as students is to be in constant communication with the lender. If you are in a situation of unemployment, there are options to not be in repayment at that period of time. So that's where the federal loan programs have the safeguards built in.
So Charlie, why did you go so much with private loans rather than take advantage of some of the federal loans? Was it something that Jaclyn said in the piece that a lot of people, you among them, that you didn't even know that necessarily that these were available to you?
I think that some of the opportunities came about they were more spontaneous. I had the option of going into the semester in Washington journalism program with George Washington University, and that was a 6-month program, so I needed to borrow a little bit more than I was able to get from just the federal funding at the time.
If you could go back over the last 4 years, would you do things differently, knowing the outcome now?
No, I don't think I would. I mean, I think all of those experiences were worthwhile, so I'm happy that I did pursue them.
What about you, Terrell? Are you hearing programs like this? Would you do anything differently, or did you have to do what you've done to get to this point in your college career?
No, not really, because I don't think I had both unsubsidized and subsidized loan, and I don't know if there's a difference between that and federal, but the loans became they were balanced for me. But it is more so for me is I don't know how it is that I'm going to pay that outside of my job and stuff like that, and what I'm going to do, I don't.
Lynn, we're sort of operating here with these two young men. They knew that they wanted to go to college and this was part of their career. But there is this conversation happening now in this country that we've become this culture where you go to your regular public school, you go through education, K through 12, and then you have to go to college. And now the conversation is turning, well, no, not everybody has to go to college. Not everybody has to be laying down the substantial amount of money. Is that a conversation that should turn? I mean, should we be really looking at whether or not people actually have to go to college, or should they be put on separate tracks?
Well, there should always be options for all different individuals. College is certainly not the only option for every student graduating from high school. It never was intended to be. There should be different tracks. People are opting to take maybe a 2-year community college experience first to reduce some of their costs and transferring to more expensive four-year schools.
And do you see that happening more at Holy Cross? Is that a new trend?
Not at Holy Cross. We don't have transfer students to any magnitude. And then you are going to find that in a number of the more selective private schools. But certainly that's an option for a whole host of colleges in the United States. Beyond that, students and families making that enrollment decision, affordability should be part of that conversation. Now, certainly financial aid plays a role. At Holy Cross, just as an example, we spent $40 million of Holy Cross scholarship dollars last year. So financial aid is playing a role, but the families are also supposed to be playing a role. And as things get more difficult, affordability should be part of the conversation at the table.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for both of you, what family considerations came into play? Did they come into play, and did they hamper you? Because I know that happens to some students where the colleges look at the family wealth and the family bank account, whether it's without regard to what other issues the families may be paying for, what other extraneous costs there are, and that becomes a liability. So did you find that your family background was a factor in all of this?
I think for me, family was absolutely a factor. My mom, she works really hard for the money she does have, and, I'm able to use her in the past as a co-signer, but you're opening up in that respect, if you can't find employment afterwards, to some vulnerability, and I think that's definitely a consideration that you have to keep in mind.
Yeah, I really didn't have, my family was there for me, to support me, but financially they knew they couldn't be able to give me the money. So that's why when choosing the institution I wanted, I had to make sure it was something low cost or something within my range that I felt I could pay within the time frame, so because I didn't have that support financially from the family, but which is okay, because I knew coming out of high school that it was going to be that. So that's why I always had my job, to depend on that, and also a low-cost institution. I made sure to look for that, but I really didn't want to do, any two-year college and transfer, because I heard, a lot of the credits wouldn't transfer sometimes, or they would, but then it depends what school you go to.
Becomes cumbersome.
Yeah.
Lynn, at the end of the day, this does seem a little bit more like a public service campaign or something, because this isn't wholesale change to policy, it's minor tweaks. But what do you think there will be an impact, any sort of fallout from what the president did today in terms of changing some price points or interest points rather, and accelerating this program?
Well, it is a step forward. I think it's a recognition that we have our youth borrowing for into their future. And sometimes, in some ways, beyond what's reasonable. So we have a reasonableness that we cross over. So we say, at Holy Cross, if it costs you $200,000 for a four-year experience there, and you borrow $20,000 of it, really, that's reasonable. The repayment, the issue we started to run into are what decisions are these students making or unable to make because of that debt.
Well, that's the thing. You're asking 18-year-olds who don't know their way in the world for the most part, and with all due respect, and don't necessarily know banking and everything, to make decisions that are going to affect the next 30 years of their life, perhaps.
Right, which is why we try with education and conversation counseling to make the student aware that they are in fact borrowing. This will become a loan right after you graduate. And when we can have good, safe financing for our students, which are the federal loan programs, that makes good financial sense. Now, what has happened now with this announcement is that it frees up some of the student decision making. Students can be more free to go into a career path with a lower starting salary. Take education for an example. That a student now, because they can cap the repayment at 10% of their income and only have to repay those loans for 15 years actually, then that gives them a better opportunity to say, yes, I will pursue a career in education. My loan debt will not prevent me from being able to do that.
Well, this is really, really interesting, and good luck to the both of you. I don't envy you having to go into this job market at this time, but thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
All right, and in a moment, on a somewhat lighter note, it's Shakespeare and the Ladies, the new show, Women of Will.